Okay. I can't believe what I just watched. The UFC Fight Pass Invitational 3 was just an absolute disaster. I mean, jiu-jitsu is a sport that really hasn't gotten the mainstream attention that it deserves. But tonight, man, we really did not show why we deserve to be a mainstream sport. I mean, you got to respect anybody that goes out there and competes. I'm here on my couch or zero gravity chair or whatever, criticizing people that are actually going out there and doing it. But with that being said, I mean, let's just take it fight by fight. We got the finals of the competition, which was Mason Fowler versus Luke Griffith. First of all, Luke Griffith won his matches against two extremely tiny people, Oliver Taza, his own teammate, and the 10th Planet guy. And, you know, I mean, Luke Griffith is getting better and better and better, but man, he's just one of these like Gordon clones where he just has like some of their systems down, and his game lacks a completeness, a roundness, a wholeness. They say jiu-jitsu is the art and science of control that leads to submission. He's just got a couple formulas, a couple science elements in there, and there's a lot of substance that's lacking. So him just going through and doing his mandible strangles over people's mouths that were much smaller than him in the overtime rounds was not impressive. Was not impressive. He, in time, of course, he's only a brown belt, I guess, but he needs sufficient development in his game if he wants to be one of the best. I mean, a lot of work to be one of the best. He's just like one of these Gordon clones that have mastered a couple of their systems. It's wild. Um, then Mason Fowler. I got to hand it to Mason Fowler as far as his jiu-jitsu in his matches. He's got such an aggressive attacking style. He used the rubber guard effectively against body lock passing when people were on their knees, which is a breath of fresh air to see. The rubber guard gets a lot of smack because it's a pretty terrible position. When people want to play a postured game or a game of standing passing on their feet, you can't play rubber guard. But when people try to force the action with body lock passing, your underhooks can become a liability, and you're already on your knees with your posture broken. So rubber guard is a great way um, to counteract the modern style of body lock passing. And Mason Fowler did this excellently. He did a phenomenal job in his matches. I believe he had at least one triangle victory, if not more. Anyway, his overtime, he elected to go with something called a high ball ride on the back, which is where you control the back essentially with one hook, where ideally you have the other hip locked between your legs. And I've never believed in this control. It's a lackluster control. Some people who have short legs try to make an argument for it that it's a good measure of control, but I mean, you're allowing the guy to escape. When you see a master of back control, when you see a Gordon Ryan on the back, he's always locking a body triangle. You can lock a body triangle if you have short legs. And especially like the size difference between Mason Fowler and Luke Griffith wasn't something that was so substantial that he only needed to do the high ball ride. He could have at least put both hooks in and had a better control situation on the back. When he did to with this high ball ride, he was literally giving up. Literally, he still won by some miracle, but he was literally leaving the whole tournament to chance by doing a ridiculous back control on Luke Griffith. And Luke was just defensively framing, and man, it was just a terrible match, really, the finals, where Luke Griffith was not able to escape the north-south. He was not able to escape side control, and he was just trying to prevent his arms to being isolated so that he could work his system again that he did on his other opponents. But anyway, we move on to Ricardo Evangelista versus Dan the Giant guy, Dan from New Wave, which was a ridiculous match. I mean, I wouldn't say this to Ricardo Evangelista's face, because he is a giant. But man, what's this whole thing where you're just giving up? I mean, it's ridiculous. Dan threw him around, took him down, passed his guard, did some nice body lock passing, and moved straight into mount. And he did a smother tap, I guess. They were saying, oh, yeah, it's a neck crank. But no, what happened was Evangelista has a history of giving up. He has given up many times when he's been in bad positions before. And how are you going to do this when you're trying to take jiu-jitsu further, you're trying to make it a better sport, you're trying to increase jiu-jitsu's mainstream ability in the public eye? You can't just give up like that in a match. And shame on him for doing so against Big Dan. And, again, I'm not trying to criticize Ricardo Evangelista as a person, but a lot of times it's a bully mentality. You try to bully people into your game, and if you can't bully them and it's actually you that gets bullied, you get frustrated and you give up almost instantly. You see this with an Eber Santos, and it's just not good. It's not a good look. It's not good for our sport, and especially when you're trying to make it more mainstream. Next match, Miesha Tate versus Bia Mesquita. I mean, this was ridiculous. Ridiculous. Forget even the match where it was basically just Miesha Tate toughing out a majority of the match. They ended it in EBI overtime rules, where you can start in a dominant position like the back or an armbar. And they decided to start in arm bars. And Miesha Tate, Miesha Tate fought Ronda Rousey twice and got armbarred twice from Ronda Rousey. You would think that she would understand the defense and offensive side of arm bars. I mean, I love Miesha Tate. She's one of my favorite fighters ever. One of my favorite fights of all time is Miesha Tate versus Holly Holm, where Miesha Tate won the title. But when she went to try to even attack the armbar, let's say, Bia Mesquita's many-time world champion. She's got a solid armbar, which she does, and you couldn't escape. Fine. Let's just give you that grace, even though you should be an absolute expert. You should be the best woman in the world at escaping arm bars. Let's give her that grace and just talk about her armbar offense. She's with her hands extended, trying to pull the armbar to her with a complete separation of her body and the arm. I mean, it's absurd. If you're trying to do an armbar, the idea is you need to control them in that spot, and then you need to extract the arm in a way that is slow, controlled, and that you completely nullify their movement. And she was doing a spastic pulling motion, which only helped facilitate the escape of her opponent. And it was just a shame to see, honestly. I mean, I would expect Misha Tate, especially preparing for this kind of fight, to have looked at the armbar closely again, and just a absolute abysmal of an armbar attempt. I mean, defensively and offensively, it was a dumpster fire. And then the main event with Gordon and Nicky Rod was ridiculous in itself, where Nicky Rod plays this cagey game. I have the full breakdown on my YouTube of every second of the match, if you of all these fights, if you guys want to see. But Nicky Rod plays a cagey game where he keeps his elbows in, he manages the distance, he doesn't allow Gordon to get into any position worthwhile where he could finish him. And he basically, pushes Gordon away and backs up and engages just enough to keep it somewhat, like he's actually in the fight, but he's not in the fight. Furthermore, Gordon was playing a half guard game, which is really the only game that he could play with the distance that Nicky Rod was allowing. And when you play half guard, the major defense or flaw rather of half guard is that it is a reactive game. So if your opponent doesn't come forward and engage with you, it's really difficult to get things going. And that's what you saw happen for most of the match. Then you saw the EBI overtime rounds with Nicky Rod and Gordon. And, I mean, that was a disaster in itself with the controversial ending and everything. First off, you got to hand it to Nicky Rod with his back escape and rear naked choke ability and defense. So they are probably the two best guys in the world at that rule set, and you could see how Gordon was better. Gordon had to end up winning on escape time. But in the final escape, first of all, the UFC camera is completely facing their backs. We can't see anything that's going on. All you can see is the tip of Nicky Rod's elbow that he's got like a fully locked rear naked choke, it looks like. But we'll never be able to tell because the camera angle was so horrible. Then the referee allows Nicky Rod to keep on squeezing this rear naked choke over Gordon's face in the final minutes of the last overtime. And Gordon is trying to signal to everybody, hey, the time has expired. Like, stop squeezing this rear naked choke over my face, and has to tap out. Mind you, all while the UFC cameras are looking at their backs and you're not able to tell anything. And the only thing that you're able to see is Gordon tap Nicky Rod's leg, adding complete confusion, making it look like the actual winner of the match lost the match, and just a terrible job of camera work, a terrible job of refereeing. The actual fight was going to be with Gordon and Vinny Magalhães, which would be a interesting, compelling match, but Vinny had to pull out of that fight, and it doesn't do jiu-jitsu any favors to have a card in this way. Gordon should be angry that even though he won, this sort of has people feeling like somehow Nicky Rod won because Gordon tapped, even though it was to notify everybody that the time had expired, and this giant, muscly athlete guy is breaking my teeth into my face, and I have to politely ask him to stop somehow, and me trying to signal that the clock has ran out is not enough. a lot of matches, if you've seen a ton of jiu-jitsu matches, sometimes if someone's in a submission in the final seconds and time expires, you can tap to say, hey, dude, let go of this submission. The time has run out. So that's something that I guess comes with experience after seeing so many matches before. But what a disaster of an event. And man, I mean, I'm here on my couch, right? I mean, what can I say? But still, it would be like watching a tennis match and every point was won by an unforced error where both guys just kept hitting into the net the whole time. So, I want jiu-jitsu so bad to be a mainstream sport. I want it to grow. I want it to be in back-to-back UFC events, but with a showing and a performance like that, it does not do well for the entire sport, in my opinion. So those are my thoughts. That's the recap of the UFC event, and that's what I think. But at the end of the day, I guess whatever it is, what it is, it's just jiu-jitsu. There's a lot more important things in life, and I always wish you guys all the best and wish all of the competitors the best, and no ill will or hatred towards them at all. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day or night, and I will see you in the next one.